And according to that, I am live. Welcome to Tokyo Tonight. My name is Yiko Simon. Boom. Welcome. Good to see everybody. Good to see people already rocking into the comments. Some comments last week that, yes, I think I was adjusting my distance too much from the mic. So I'm going to try to focus today on keeping a consistent distance, especially because I'm going to speak quietly because it's summer and my son is asleep and we have all the doors open with the air conditioning. So, yeah, I guess that's how I will go through all of this, but I will, good to see so many people already rocking into the chat and good to see so many people, fair bit of news to go through this week. Yeah, but let's start out. We've got Kenny Lamb, Open Japan for Tourists, again, asking for that, and that's one of the topics that we have tonight. Indeed, it's supposed to be open, but it is not. And NHK seemed confused about that tonight, so yeah, we'll definitely be talking about that. And I must admit, with everything going on in the last week in particular with coronavirus in Japan, it's hard to think that they will be accelerating, although as it is right now, I suppose the good news is that it looks like the government isn't looking to lock down. Again, we'll see how bad it gets, but at the moment they're looking to stay open and not to introduce more restrictions, which at least means that the odds of closing the border again seem pretty low at this point. It looks like the government sort of is looking for a way to sort of normalize and follow what other countries are doing. And I think it's pretty hard given there are other countries that have gotten into this current wave before Japan and have had it worse than Japan and are still staying open. I think Japan sort of feels the need to follow that and not go the China route or whatever. There's not many countries locking down hard anymore. Not that Japan ever really did lock down hard, but yeah, we'll definitely talk about that. Kenny Lamb. Quint Ranker, good to see you. Dan H, Open Japan, more like a return to Sakoku. I don't think it's returning to Sakoku, but yeah, it certainly is taking its time about opening. Dan H, by the way, one of the topics, I did finally watch the Den Fujita video about the McDonald's founder, and it was good. Thank you for the recommendation. I've got it in the topics. And I did tweet out about it during the week as well, but it was a good recommendation, and I do appreciate that. But yeah, good to see Kenny Lamb, Dan H, Quint Rankard. Who else we got in here? We got One Johnson waving. Good to see you. We've got definitely no technical features. I had to make a few adjustments tonight. I've changed where the mic is plugged in. I've made a few adjustments, but no, so far everything seems to be looking okay. Dan H asks, in this episode of Tokyo Tonight, will I be fashionably late as usual? No, I was actually about 1 minute on time. Will there be any squirrels to chase or butter ants? No butter ants planned, but squirrels are virtually guaranteed. Yeah, they're a feature of the show. So yeah, we've got that. Quint Rankard, worth every minute. In my humble opinion, I'm glad you think so. Good to always appreciate it. Ada Void, good morning, Arizona. Good to have you to Arizona. Auntie Liana in Yokohama, konbanwa. Excellent to have you with us. Nice to have people inside Japan and outside of Japan. Speaking of inside Japan, we've got Yoni Boomy. Good to have you in konbanwa. And Traveling Gabriel, good to have you in here as well. Morning, evening, or wherever you are in the world. Where are you logging in from, Traveling Gabriel? I recognize the handle. You've probably told me before, but I don't recall. Iraq 299. Excellent to see you indeed, crew and Iraq 299 and everyone else. Currently 13 concurrent viewers. Of course, I love it if people do drop in and just say hello, especially if you just drop in and say where you're logging in from. That's always really fun as well. Remember, as always, if you want to get my attention, you don't even actually have to @mark. You can see on the screen right there. Just type my name and it will flash orange. And if it flashes orange when I'm skimming through the comments after each video or after each segment, I will focus on the comments. I will stop and make sure I read the comments that mention my name. I just like seeing my name. It's a narcissist. It makes it easier for me to go through the comments, basically. So do that. Oh, Gabriel's from Arizona as well. Very good. Yeah, great. Thanks for joining. Lysander 45, excellent to see you in here as well. Summer vacation starts on Thursday. I was thinking of visiting Tokyo. I might give it a miss until the cases settle. Yeah. I mean, I can't say it's good. I must admit, it is different, and I will talk about this. It is a lot more relaxed, but that's probably the problem. The numbers are pretty awful at the moment, but pretty much everywhere seems to be like this at the moment. But yes, indeed, the numbers are bad. So yeah, anyway, if you want to get my attention, do say my name. Remember to like the video. I do appreciate that. Leave a like. It's pretty much all that I'm doing it for at the moment. Just that and peanuts and likes. Dan H, did I see the video about Li Liu? You thought the video was more up your alley, and their video was about the kiwi fruit. I'm sorry. I'm always lagging, and your recommendations are always good. So I really want to do this. Let me open up Notepad. Lilu kiwi fruit. In fact, I feel like, you know what? I'm going to look this up on my mobile right now. So this is a video on YouTube, and I can find it by putting in Lilu kiwi fruit, right? Just thinking, if I look it up, I might discover that it's one that I've seen. Lilu's advice for 2022. Is that it? Sorry, Dan H, give me the title of the vid. I'm gonna add it to my watch list right now. So yeah, somebody, by the way, or earlier mentioning in fact, I've skipped past it, but there was I was typing in the comments actually that Life in Japan was asked if I had watched the Being Japanese video by I think, is it Life in Japan or Quentin Rankett, that's right, was asking, did I see Life in Japan's, Life Where I'm From's new documentary on being Japanese? Question there, and I responded that I saw it in my subscriptions feed, and it's 2 episodes, each 1 hour long, and I did drop it into my watch later list, so it's there to watch. As usual, I'm lagging behind a little bit, but it is there. If it's on my watch later list, I will see it. So I love the recommendations in the thread. In fact, again, also looking forward to see Dan H's title on this one as well, so I make sure I get it locked in. But yeah, I'm looking forward to watching that, and your recommendation means even more that I will make sure that I watch that, so thank you. Speaking of Boom, looks like Sakurajima is getting excited. I missed that, really? Again? I mean, Sakurajima is, of course, the big island volcano off the coast of Kagoshima in the bottom of Japan. It erupts regularly, like every 4 or 5 years it erupts, but it can have big eruptions, so it can be dangerous, but everyone down there is pretty used to living with it. But yeah, I guess not necessarily what what we need right now. Crypto Airy in bed with COVID second day. Oh no, Crypto Airy. Well, welcome, Crypto Airy. I'm sorry that you're in bed second day with COVID. Hopefully, it sounds like people who are catching it lately, more people are catching it, but they're in what I'm hearing about. I've heard cases like Comics Plus, Akasan, he had it, a few other people talking about it. It seems to be a lot of fever, a lot of discomfort, but hopefully you'll be able to shake it off. But yeah, it's sounds like everyone's getting it, and yeah, again, I'll talk about this more soon, but please get better soon. Take good care. Drink lots of liquids, and yeah, sorry to hear that. Shubas, never fear. Shubas is here, our representative from Panama. Always excellent to have you in here. Hope you're having some nice coffee there. And yeah, great to have everybody here in the chat. I'm going to jump into the topics very soon, unless there's anyone else who can say hello. It's Tokyo for you, Crypto Airy. So there we go. Nice to know that you're in Tokyo, and kind of freaky at the moment, isn't it? Actually, just how all of a sudden everyone's getting it. I mean, I can kind of understand, even like myself, I've been increasing my going into work and catching up with friends and stuff like that. And I think everybody's just done that at the same time. And it's not that we're still sanitizing, still wearing masks, still taking all the precautions, still working mostly from home. But even with all of that, I'm definitely letting down my guard, and I think a lot of people are doing that, and I think that's just where the numbers are coming from. It's just, it's not that, even if you're doing the right things, it's just the fact that people are definitely easing up. A lot of companies are encouraging people to come back into the office, and yeah, a lot of people are meeting up and seeing friends for the first time, and why not? I mean, it's been more than 2 years now. Everyone's getting tired of it, but this is what's happening, unfortunately. So, yeah, sorry to hear that, but yeah, anyway, do get better soon. And if there's no one else going to say hello, I would love if anyone who hasn't said hello yet, please say hello. Would love if people could also leave some likes. Only 4 likes at the moment, but of course, if you want to watch the whole show and then judge, I will take that. But I do appreciate that. Remember to subscribe if you haven't subscribed. And we're 10 minutes in, so let's jump into it. Let's jump into the topics. So yeah, the very first one, actually, the recommendation there of Dan H, which I finally did actually get around to watching right after the show last week. The founder of McDonald's Japan, and a really cool story. I didn't realize this guy's basically like the idol of Masayoshi Son, the richest person in Japan. Basically sort of studied and learned from this guy. He wrote a book basically on this, but yeah, born into poverty, and became an interpreter during GHQ, and basically was he had hunger, he had hustle, and he saw opportunities to basically he got the first McDonald's franchise in Japan, and he basically figured out how to build the first branch in Ginza and how to get it set up so that it would work for Japanese consumers. And even when the US side wasn't sure about the way that he was doing things and the things that he was changing, I mean, there were moments when he had like pictures of biker gangs. American biker gangs like Hell's Angels and stuff in the 1970s or 60s, like posted in the restaurants, and the McDonald's US folks were saying that's not really consistent with our wholesome image of having Hell's Angels images and criminal biker gangs on the walls. And Den was like, it's okay, I mean, don't worry, Japanese don't understand it. It just looks like freedom, looks like America. So just trust me, let me run with this. And they did, although they weren't happy with it. But a lot of things, it just showed that it was just someone who had. I mean, again, you don't really have people like that anymore in Japan. You don't have many people. Poverty exists, but you don't have a huge swathe of society born into poverty like you had then. And it produced a different kind of person, but yeah, a real entrepreneur who was actually very, very good at filling that gap, bringing American business and culture into Japan, and setting up businesses that could sort of be successful globally. He literally wrote the book on it, and it was a really great documentary, and it was from the channel Allocators Asia. And you know what? I did notice that there were other videos, and they're not on my watch list right now, actually. So I will go back and make sure that I add those. So thank you, Dan H. And thank you always for the recommendations. Actually, a bunch of channels that you've recommended, I really, really love at the moment. So by the way, Dan H, I feel like I always want to credit you on Twitter whenever I do this, but I don't know if you're on Twitter, or maybe I don't recognize the handle name there, but yeah. RS, great to have you in the chat. Yoni mentions, by the way, wished that Japan could have locked down softer, though. That's an interesting one, and we'll come to that. There's a bit of a debate online as to whether Japan has locked down hard or soft. And I would argue that it's soft. I mean, there haven't been, it's kind of funny. Socially, it's been hard, no question. But legally, it's been soft. There's been no real penalties. And in fact, the few penalties that have been applied, like fines being applied to restaurants that, that didn't follow the closing down early orders, basically had their fines revoked when they challenged them in court. And that was all that there was. I mean, that said, there was enforcement trying to get the restaurants to close early, but that was really it. It's more just as a society, Japan has just decided to go hard, but voluntarily. And I like that approach. But yeah, we'll talk about that soon. But RS, hey, Hiko Chudoma from Islamabad. Oh, wow. Great to have someone from Islamabad watching. I've been lucky. Over the years, when I was a kid, I remember my dad was at staff college in Australia, and I had Indian and Pakistani military family friends, and they were both in the same, class at my elementary school, and our parents were at the same class at the training college, even though they were from Pakistan and Indian military, which was always kind of cool. I know you've had crazy weather the last few weeks, like 50 degrees and stuff like that, so I hope you're doing okay with the heat. I mean, they're complaining, in Europe and so on at their heat waves, and rightly so, they're terrible heat waves, but it sounds like, Pakistan in particular has had insane weather the last few weeks, so I hope you're doing okay with that, and great to have you in here, Tudom. We've got Nick. Hello, good to see you. And indeed, you are making my day just a little bit better by saying hello, and I do appreciate it. Traveling Gabriel asks, is Paxlovid available in Japan? Seems to work as a vaccine shot. No idea. I'm sorry. I wish I knew, but I don't. As a vaccine, I've never heard of it as a vaccine. It sounds like it might be something that they give as an antiviral, as a medicine. But I'm not sure. I do not know anything about that. So maybe other people who know, maybe drop in the comments. But I'm not familiar with that myself, Traveling Gabriel. But thanks for asking. The next story that we have from this week is so the Osaka Expo, the Osaka 2025 Expo. After releasing a controversial mascot, which I must say, in a country like full of mascots, it's pretty hard to come up with mascots that stand out. Of course, the previous, when was it, 1960 or something, the previous Osaka Expo is kind of marked that it had some crazy sort of out there, artistic, weird sort of things, which are still like landmarks for the city now. And people are sort of commenting that it looked like a genetic experiment gone wrong when they had the list of candidates, and Osaka, being Osaka, went just for the weirdest one. And they had this character, which I must say, I love. I really think, and I really like respect Osaka for going out. I wish Tokyo would do this. Tokyo, like with the Olympics, just picked the most boring, generic sort of characters that people instantly forget. Osaka's just picked this sort of happy, like genetic, science accident monster. That's kind of quasi terrifying and cute at the same time. I really think they really hit it out of the park with this mascot, which is hard to do in Japan. And they officially gave it a name this week. The name of the 2025 Osaka mascot or Expo mascot, as if the appearance and the theme alone wasn't kind of like enough. Its name is Myaku, which I think is awesome. And people immediately said, oh, that's going to be unpronounceable to English-speaking kids and people from a lot of countries. If you write it, it says Myaku, Myaku. So a lot of people might read that and say Myaku, Maya. You know what? They might say Myaku, which would be hilarious because that means illegal drugs. Myaku. But you know, it's probably how a lot of people are going to say it now that I think about it. But if you teach people how to pronounce it, Myak, it sounds like the aliens in Mars Attacks. Myak, this guy says more ack, but Myak. I think it'd be like if you teach kids how to say it. I mean, it's not like we can't make the sound Myak. Myak. It's just how you should pronounce it. And again, it's cool. It's cool. It's fun. It's weird. It's doable. I mean, this is just so Osaka. Osaka, for those, I mean, most people watching this probably already have an idea of the different cultures of different cities in Japan, but Osaka is like, Osaka is definitely they think they're the number 2 city. They are technically the number 3 city because Yokohama is the number 2 city. But there again, there's no clear. If you walked from, and you can walk from Tokyo to Yokohama, you wouldn't realize anywhere where there's a boundary, where there's a different, city, and they're not even that far apart. So, but technically they are different municipalities. So Osaka kind of claims to be number 2. But they're very culturally, Tokyo trains are silent. Osaka trains are noisy with people chatting. Strangers spontaneously chat to you in Osaka. There's laughter everywhere you go. People are telling jokes. It's a city of comedians. They wear bright clothes, either that or like leopard skin patterns or bright zany clothes. They're basically, I think of it as kind of like, I always explain Australia to people in Japan as saying that, New Zealand and Australia, New Zealand is like Tohoku. It's kind of, stoic and mumbly and sulky and never actually says what they think, even though they're probably thinking terrible things. And Osaka, which is, Osaka is like Australia. Australia is like Osaka, where basically everyone thinks they're a comedian. They'll strike up conversations with you, even if they don't know you. They're very friendly. And, they take pride in standing out, even if it's in weird ways. And that's really, really, Osaka is the Australia of Japan. Or Australia is the Osaka of the English-speaking world, is the way that I summarize it. And to me, I just love that they've just gone nuts with this. It's great. So and it's kind of funny that, the thing about the name thing though is when they called it Myak, which I think is brilliant, but of course the name that the internet gave it right away was Koroshite-kun. Koroshite is literally please kill me. Comes from the I think the end of The Fly. The movie The Fly and The Fly 2, he puts the gun to his own head and says, please kill me. And again, like in The Fly, like a biological mistake gone wrong. It's they called it literally, little boy, please kill me. The little please kill me boy. Koroshite-kun is what they called it. And when they called it Myak, the internet was like, no, we can't call it that. It's please kill me, kid. Izurai. Some people are saying it's hard to say. Some people saying, can foreigners even say that? Some people saying, oh, it's gross. But that's what's good about it. Anyway, I've talked for far too long about a mascot design, but I really think that Osaka's like, smash this one. That's just me. Feel free to say what you feel free to leave your own thoughts in there. But back into the comments. Dan H. Tried Twitter, sent me some links, didn't like the UX, deleted as a result. Fair enough. Especially with with Elon Musk basically taking to it with a flamethrower at the moment. I'm not sure how much of a future it has. I like Twitter. I like it better than Facebook or other social media, but I do like this as well. Thank you for reminding. In fact, you know what? I'm going to go straight to the Asia allocators because I'm just going to forget otherwise. In fact, then Fujita Asia Okay, there it is. And you know what? I thought I subscribed to this channel. I subscribed to it now. Videos. How China stole the kiwi. That's the one that you mean. Watch later, and I'll download so I can watch it offline. Boom. Okay, I'm gonna totally binge this channel. Oh, Air Asia one, Aviation and ASEAN. Love Air Asia actually for flying to Phuket from Singapore. Okay, these look good. These look good. Oh, and the Legend of Li Liu, Tiananmen leader. Yes. Okay, I am doing that now. So, bada boom. Thank you. Those are the. I am now subscribed and checking those out. Dan H. Thank you for the recommendation. Always. I will. And for everybody, Allocators Asia. I'm not going to type in the channel name now, but seriously, I think right now Dan H is the champion of recommending channels on this show. So, yeah, I very much appreciate that. Japan always has some sort of cute mascot. Yes, indeed. And Traveling Gabriel, it's an antiviral medication, 89% effective to keep people from hospitalization. Well, that's pretty good to hear. Yeah, I hope that they've got it here. I don't think there's anything here that wouldn't come here except some of the dodgy like China ones. But yeah, if it's available in Western countries, hopefully it's available here. DJ Sunny Side Up, excellent to see you, homie, as well. Great to see you. Black Tengu, representative from Greece, great to have you in here. So Yokohama's technically the second tier city of Japan. Not tier, rank, I would say. Well, not rank, it's basically... Japan isn't like China. China has so many cities with so many people that they literally have tiers, right? There's, tier 1 is like Shanghai and Beijing, and then I think Shenzhen and Guangzhou fall into that, and then you got tier 2 cities like Dalian, which is the same size as Yokohama. Actually, in Japan, no question, if they had tier cities, and I've never heard the concept used here, tier 1 would be Osaka, Nagoya, Yokohama, Tokyo. Tier 2, if there is one, would probably be like Fukuoka, Sendai, Sapporo, like 1 million. Different to China, but yeah, ranked number 2 for population is Yokohama. That's right. Fukuoka is probably 4th. I think Fukuoka might be 5th. Yeah, it'll be something like that. It'll be Sapporo, Fukuoka, Sendai are like sort of hovering around that 5th place anyway. But I think you're right. I think Fukuoka will be the biggest. Quentin Rankin says, let's introduce that thing to the giant squid. We've got Kita Analogu Taro has retracted a message, but anyway, I'm glad that you messaged. で、日本語で書いても全然構わないので、日本語でも大丈夫です。So yes, we've got that. Arak. Japanese nicknames. The new rubbish disposal plant in your town, Tachikawa, has been nicknamed Touchmuni. Touchmuni. That's I suppose kind of cute. I mean, Intotsu doesn't really sound as cute as Touch Mini, although I worry how that might become if people catch on to that. But yes, anyway, thank you for all of that. The big story this week is that now Tokyo is regularly now hitting over 30,000 cases a day, and it's been going up like double per week. How about Kochi? Kochi would be Kochi is nice for the fact it is like not in the top tiers of cities, and that's how as it should be. By the way, on the ranking of cities, I think Kyoto would probably be ahead of Fukuoka for population now that I think about it. But yeah, but in terms of cities, I mean, one way to tell the populations is just by the Rona numbers at the moment. Although Okinawa is doing particularly badly at the moment, as is Fukuoka. But yeah, Tokyo is now 30,000 cases a day, and week over week, every week, it still is basically doubling. It's like 1.9 to 2 times in most places in Japan, including Tokyo, which means that this week, we could be getting into the 40,000s this week. The line is vertical. We've already exceeded the highest ever number of cases. Before this, in the previous waves, the highest number of cases recorded in Tokyo was 20,000. Whenever you talk about the numbers, some people immediately say, oh, that's definitely not all the numbers because some people are catching it and not going, or, they're not being offered testing when they need it. And there was a shortage of testing capacity in previous waves, which made people not trust the numbers. I always thought that, the testing and stats were being collected basically the same way. Testing has become more easily available, which is catching more cases. But of course, the way that you really determine if they're catching cases accurately is by the positivity rates, which they say if it's above like 9% or 10%, that I think 5% is considered the ideal threshold. If you're getting 100 tests and 5 of those are positive, that generally indicates that sufficient testing is being done. People are getting lots of tests just to be safe, and only 5% of cases are showing up positive. Right now, the positivity rates are on average, like overall for Tokyo, over 40%. They're getting up to like 45%. And a lot of hospitals on the news say that they're getting over 70% positivity rates, which implies that there are large number. And in spite of the insane numbers that we have at the moment, there's probably large numbers of people that are not even getting tested. And already hospitals are signaling that they might be running out of capacity to keep up with testing. Like even when they book in people 15 minutes and they try to do tests, all day, a lot of clinics no longer have the test kits available or the time available. They get booked out in the mornings. So people with it, and I've been at work, I've never seen before lines outside of clinics going down the road on the street like I've been seeing the last few days. So in this whole thing, in the whole pandemic, I've never seen visible lines of people taking PCR tests outside on the street and long lines on the street for PCR tests the way that I've been seeing the last week. So this is new. It's like what's happened in other countries, but it's always as bad as it's gotten here, and it's gotten bad with like hospital beds running out and stuff like that. The good news so far, although of course serious cases and deaths are a trailing factor, so we could be seeing the serious cases taking over the hospitals and indeed deaths coming in the next couple of weeks because it's just spiked up like crazy. But as it is at the moment, the hospital bed capacity is something like still 47%. I saw today. That's gone up from like 30% last week. So they are starting to fill up, but they still have capacity. So in spite of the numbers being the highest ever, the medical system is so far keeping up. Although the other thing that is happening right now is that there are cases where anyone needing to go to hospital for any reason, including coronavirus, but even any other kind of medical emergency, ambulances are having trouble finding hospitals that will take patients, including patients who have been stuck, emergency patients that have been stuck in ambulances now for something like almost an average of 5 hours. So that in itself is also getting kind of crazy. So lots of levels at the moment. You don't want to get sick right now, but everyone is. So the question is how has this happened? And some people saying, well, everyone's still wearing masks. Everyone, so I thought masks were the reason that Japan was supposed to be so protected. There was a comment on Twitter I saw like that, to which I responded that, well, it's never just been the masks. It's been a bunch of things. It's been the social paranoia about interaction. It's been, the use of sanitizer. It's been the care about, not going out, not speaking in public, not, drinking and so on, and following all of the social rules and so on as well. But even then, you could say that those things have basically not changed. So why have the numbers spiked? And it really seems to be two things. It seems to be that this new variant, the BA.5 variant, Delta Cron or whatever they're calling it, seems to be way more contagious. Fortunately, doesn't seem to be producing, at least so far, as many serious cases as the other waves, but it seems to be way more contagious. So that's the first thing. But the other thing is, from June, and I've been talking about this on the show, there's no question that things have eased back a lot in Japan. Now, my company had a big "Let's all come back to the office" campaign after we've been mostly working entirely from home for the last 2 years, and I've been going into work regularly 2 or 3 times a week the last few weeks. And I've been enjoying it. And I've been enjoying seeing people. I traveled overseas for the first time in June. So even I was definitely getting back into going back to normal mode. I've been out. I've seen friends I haven't seen for years. I'm being careful, and I haven't caught it. But I'm definitely doing things. Although I'm still wearing a mask, and I'm still sanitizing, and I'm still being careful as I'm doing these things. Like when I'm meeting friends, I'm meeting early, going home early, not drinking. They've often got screens on the tables in the restaurants and so on. But I am seeing people, and I'm enjoying doing that. But I suppose it's that combination that a lot of people like myself are now socializing again and catching up with friends again. And we've been given sort of a green light to do it really 2 months ago, when things did seem to be getting a lot better and we're consistently improving. But I think it's the combination that this more contagious variant has come in right when we were just starting to ease it back. And we haven't eased it back in the sense that the government was starting to talk about, okay, maybe let's not wear masks so much. That has not eased back as much, at least where I am in Tokyo. Everyone is still pretty much wearing masks, except noticeably the group that seems to not be wearing masks the most is foreigners. And that's in spite of the lack of tourists at the moment. So these are residents. And even online, I see this where when I say, I wear a mask when I go out running, not because I'm worried about catching it or, I'm trying to be medically safe. Honestly, the masks I have, I can pretty much breathe through, but I just don't want to get dirty looks. and other people saying, well, be the change you want to be. Do you want to be in a society full of masks? And I'm like, well, I don't care. I'm happy to follow the rules, and I don't want to look like an a-hole. Uh, but a lot of people in Japan are of the mindset that no, we must lead by example, which to me is like, no, let's not lead by example. Seriously, if Japanese change their minds on it, I'll follow. But I think foreigners are not going to inspire a revolution against masks. We're just going to look like people who don't separate their rubbish. And it's going to be the next stereotype that we're going to be bashed with. And this is the main worry about tourism, although obviously that's not a big concern yet for reasons that we're about to talk about. But yeah, in any case, the numbers are going crazy. They are doubling week over week at the moment. We've just had 200,000 cases nationally a day. Again, these are numbers which are modest on a per capita basis, or not even modest. They're more normal by OECD standards. In fact, I've seen graphs this week showing that really for the first time now Japan has higher per capita daily rates than basically. We've always kind of felt kind of good about ourselves looking at compared to Australia, compared to Europe, compared to the Americas and so on. How Japan has always had much lower daily, as bad as it's gotten. We've never had the daily rates of cases of those countries. And now, even by the same Japanese testing standards and everything, which don't necessarily catch everything, we are now getting way more cases per capita than anywhere in Europe or United States or anywhere at the moment. So it's objectively worse here now, and it's also concerning because I think when I talk to people from the United States and Europe, a lot of people now, it's pretty common to talk to people that have not only had it but had it like a couple of times, and they're getting pretty relaxed about it over there. Here in Japan, when they still do antibody like samples of the population to try to get a sense of how much it's spread through, most estimates are that only about 10% of people in Japan maximum have had coronavirus at all. 90% of people have been able to avoid it, which is kind of good, but it kind of implies that it really has yet to go through the society here. And maybe this is just like making up for time, that this is particularly this contagious thing is going through. So it's bad, but at the same time, the government is not instituting another lockdown at the moment. I mentioned before about I wish Japan wouldn't lock down so hard, or is it going to close off travel or anything like that? And the government signaled at the moment that no, they've got no plans at the moment to institute restrictions on movement, like requesting restaurants close early and people not go out. The government really doesn't want to go back on this. They've got plans for promoting tourism and travel and so on. And yeah, I think there's a increasing feeling that now, particularly that this one doesn't seem to be producing as many deaths, although there are deaths, and who knows how bad it will get. But as it is at the moment, the feeling is that even Japan has to move like the United States and Europe and other G7 countries have towards living with it to some extent. And that's where it looks like Japan is currently aiming to go. But of course, if it gets really bad, I think it'll be unavoidable. Interestingly, Okinawa, which per capita within the country has the worst rates, has already started to make requests from the prefectural government to restrict movement right in the middle of the summer holidays. The fact that they waited for the summer holidays to start when people were already traveling to Okinawa, one of the most popular tourist destinations within Japan for Japanese people, it was only after that they actually said, yeah, we don't want people to meet people outside of their families or go out. Yeah, it seems like they could have timed that better because this boom was kind of foreseeable the week before the summer vacation started, but it is what it is anyway. But we'll have to wait and see. At the moment, the government's saying that they do not want to go back to the kind of, they were always requests, but they were pretty rigorously enforced to work from home, to for restaurants to close. Doesn't seem to be happening yet, but we'll see how bad it gets. I don't think that will happen. I don't think that travel will restrict. I think this kind of does validate in some ways. We'll get to tourism in a moment, but it does vindicate somewhat their slow reopening of tourism. I'm kind of glad. If they had really opened the floodgates on tourism, that might be getting the blame for this right now, and it's not, and I think that's a good thing. The fact that they've gone so visibly slow on tourism, but we'll see how bad it gets anyway. But at the moment, yeah, the numbers are awful, and it really does make me feel for the first time like it's inevitable that I'm going to catch it. And I'm thinking, I've got travel coming up in September, and I don't know. I mean, at home and for traveling and for all sorts of things, and just generally, I just don't want to get it. Long COVID is scary, but even short COVID is scary. And I know if I can avoid it, I don't want to get it. But at the same time, I'm totally going into work, and I'm totally seeing some friends. So we'll see where we end up. But that's how things are at the moment. So yeah, back into the comments. is anyone reporting mortality rates? In fact, let me just go back and make sure I've got all of them. But yes, indeed. Quint Ragged asking, is anyone reporting mortality rates? Yes, the daily stats include mortality rates. They're including the number of deaths, which I think nationally was like 25 people. In Tokyo was like 3 people. Again, those numbers will increase. At the moment, the spike has really only just started, and generally these numbers trail by about 2 weeks. But still relatively low. But the mortality, the overall mortality rates are available statistically, as well as the COVID attributed death rates are also known. What was really interesting about 2019 was that actually overall mortality actually was lower than usual. That people found out were able to attribute like excess deaths, like more than statistically predictable deaths in places like Europe and America. They found all of these thousands of excess deaths. In Japan had fewer deaths than usual, which was attributed to everybody staying at home and not catching the flu or other illnesses which cause death, as well as the COVID rate. So in spite of the skepticism that Japan's numbers were genuine because they seemed too low, the mortality rates in Japan actually showed that it was genuinely not, that the measures had been effective in Japan in spite of being softer, in spite of the skepticism within Japan. But they also showed excess deaths abroad. So yeah, those numbers are available anyway. But yeah, and you can look them up for Tokyo COVID numbers. You just look up stop COVID.tokyo.com or something like that. You can find it on Google anyway. Dan H, new capitalism update. There has yet to be announcements of what it's going to be or how it's going to be financed, especially decarbonization. Foreign investors are leaving Japan and yen falling. Yes, indeed. In fact, actually, some of the investment funds I helped myself to create back in the early 2000s have Elliott. I built I built Elliott. I registered Elliott. I did all their corporate work when they set up in Japan, and they recently pulled out, and they were a big source of external capital for Japan. And yeah, they're calling BS. Honestly, I've said it before and I'll say it again. Kishida is just kind of a PR man in a suit, which his ratings are good, but he's really not ideological, and he seems to be the sort of person who comes and looks at the room and tries to say whatever he thinks the audience will be most receptive to, and nothing too strong or nothing too soft, nothing that entails making big commitments. And saying new capitalism sounds very dramatic, but it's pretty much what LDP has always stood for, sort of socially aware capitalism. In the end of the day, as you're aware, Dan H, the government kind of runs itself. It really doesn't need, politicians might set directions and aspirational goals and that kind of thing, but really when it comes to things like, for example, decarbonization or, finance, it's really the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry. They decide those things themselves, and they go on and do their stuff without really much input from politicians. And they do an okay job, although it's very quiet. Decarbonization and so on, the technology is still continuing to be supported and funded by the Japanese government. But, the government itself is being, and they can be on autopilot, frankly, because the government does run itself and they can just do a couple of slogans. But I agree, the fact that Kishida's declared something as bold as new capitalism, and I knew that he was never going to come up with anything for it. And that's right, we're still waiting. So who knows? Traveling Gabriel, are there any home kits available? They're sending them to residents in the States. You fill out a form and they send you eight free of charge. No, you can get tests free of charge. I've had a test, obviously, at the clinics, although they're running out of those at the moment. So you can go to a clinic and get one if you need one. I went myself. I think I've got actually in my topics. I got some home. Oh, there we go. When I was in Singapore, I was surprised at how RAT tests, rapid antigen test kits, were available for like $2.50 Singapore each everywhere, and at work everyone was taking them every day, and I was using them every day, and nobody ever turned up positive, including the people who PCR tested positive. So there is that. They're not totally accurate, but I thought I actually bought a whole bunch of them and brought them back to Japan and was using them when I was isolating when I came back to Japan. With the numbers going up, I actually went online and I found a bunch of kits that were the same kind or the same type of kit that I was using in Singapore. So I bought like 5 kits of 5. So I've got 25 here, and I've got them just in case. If I ever feel like it's dodgy. And tests, it looks like they're increasingly hard to get. Again, they're not totally accurate, but they are available. What's interesting about the rapid antigen tests, they are pretty affordable. These ones are about 600 yen each on average. It works out. So each one of those boxes was like 3,000 yen. So more expensive than Singapore. but still relatively affordable, particularly if you need one in a pinch. And you can still get them from most pharmacies. The thing on them is that they're labeled, you can see at the top of the picture there. Can I zoom in on that? It won't let me zoom. Zoom, there we go. Kinkyu-yo, that means for research purposes only. So, which I think is something to do with just the certification of these. They're not, they don't want people to be misled into thinking that these are as reliable as PCR tests. So they have to put this label that they're for research purposes only. But I believe that they're the same rat tests that you use in Singapore or other places. They're just it's just the way that they're certified in Japan. So yeah, I have bought some of these for the first time in the whole pandemic. I've bought some rat tests to have handy at home, although this was more because of the numbers going crazy and my experience using them in Singapore, which I didn't have before. But they are available if you need them. They don't send them out for free, but you can get free PCR tests if you need them, which are better quality tests anyway, at least so long as there's still more capacity. So yeah, there you go, Traveling Gabriel. Dan H, one of your YouTube friends, The Casual, he does a video about Japanese fashion. Did live stream where he was expressing his frustration with the xenophobia about foreigners being blamed for everything. Yeah, well, I mean, that happens in every country, but it can happen. The Casual, I will also check that out. Thank you for the recommendation. I think people go through their Japan phases as well, where they get a little bit overly sensitive about that. I get frustrated at, for example, the not wearing masks thing. I see that, and it's like, whenever you see a foreigner being a dick and breaking the rules, those people are very, very visible, and they create an impression that people seeing that think that, oh, all foreigners must be like that guy, and we all get tarred with the brush of the a-holes. That also happens. There again, of course, it's unfair and wrong for people to judge entire groups or to stereotype people based on the bad acts of a couple of people. But it is the way that the world works in every country. And again, I also don't appreciate, there's nothing I can do about it, obviously. I can't go and make people separate their rubbish and wear masks. But, I do facepalm pretty hard when I see that sort of thing. And I express my frustration at that myself, I think, as a visible minority, at least in the case of, non-Asian foreigners. Japan shouldn't blame foreigners for everything, but to the extent that they do, I wish that we wouldn't give them fuel for that. So there's both things on that. But yes, indeed. One Traveling Gabriel asks, wondering how the Japan economy will be doing with interest rate low and the yen falling. Wow, that's another big question. Well, it's hard to say at the moment. The yen is collapsing, and indeed that is definitely, as Dan H mentioned, it's partly due to all the capital and the investment money leaving the country, of course, and the yen. The central bank is continuing to print money. It's funny that the printing money, traditionally, that's what's caused hyperinflation. In Argentina, in Nazi Germany, in Zimbabwe, printing money caused this crazy inflation. Japan's been printing money like crazy for like more than 10 years now, and it hasn't done anything. The hope that it would cause wages to go up, basically because the whole economy is still just not, companies are not paying more. People refuse to pay higher prices for anything. There is now, of course, inflation happening, being driven by the cost of fuel and food shortages and so on in the world happening at the moment. So now we are getting inflation, although it's inflation not being matched by wage increases and so on, which is causing people to be poorer, which is causing people to save more money and be more conservative. And still the government just announced they're going to keep printing more money, and they said, don't worry about the currency. That's just because of America. But it's not just America. Of course, the American dollar is obscenely strong at the moment, but every other major currency is growing weaker against the US dollar, but stronger against the Japan. The yen is doing worse than everyone at the moment. So who knows? I mean, the one thing about Japan the whole 20 years is that, Japan's been predicted to collapse the whole time we've been here. When I got here 23 years ago, that was predicted it was going to collapse for its debt. Its per capita debt ratio was like worse than that of Greece. It was worse than some of the worst per capita debt countries in the world. The one distinguishing characteristic of Japan being that the debt was generally held by domestic banks, not by foreign lenders, who were not likely to call in or create an IMF situation in Japan. And somehow or another, in spite of all of the bad fundamentals, Japan has just been bad at kind of doing a managed crash landing through this whole thing, and it seems to continue to do that. The fundamentals, it's never going to be great again, but there are certain things that seem to stop it becoming terrible, which is something that I appreciate. But yeah, Um, so I don't know. I don't think you'll see a sudden crash, but I think you'll just continue to see a managed decline. I think that's inevitable just with the demographics anyway. But in lots of ways, that's just what Japan's been going through. It still is a cool place. Sadiq Akangur, it's great to have you in here from Florida, Turkey too. Yeah. Oh, you mean with the debt problems? Well, indeed, Turkey's been going through a crazy time lately. In fact, very interesting country to watch at the moment. Black Tengu, do they see the yen strengthening in the foreseeable future? Nobody sees the yen strengthening in the foreseeable future, other than the fact that it's obviously really weak at the moment. The default yen rate really should be, you can tell if it's strong or weak based on, it should be around 108 to the US dollar. And right now it's 140 to the US dollar, which means it's about 30% undervalued at the moment. So it should just correct. It shouldn't be based on anything to do with Japan. It should just be based on a correction. The cost of a hamburger, the cost of a Big Mac, it should be 108. So we'll see if that corrects or not. But yeah, Quint Rankin, there's a lot of inflation in the US right now. Soft currencies are fun. Yeah. I mean, right now, if you could travel to Japan from the US, it's party time. I've got people come over here from work, and it's like the whole country here is on a 30% sale at the moment. So it's a good time to be an American if you can travel. But of course, traveling is also difficult at the moment. And of course, the weak yen means imports, which Japan needs for everything. Energy, nobody manufactures in Japan anymore, and all of those things are like 30% more expensive right now, or between 10 and 30%, depending on the country. Everything is more expensive, so that'll mean more bad inflation. And I don't know whether overprinting money can help or harm that. So, Japan continues to be an experiment that nobody really knows the answer to. But yeah, my general prediction, just based on the whole time I've been here, is that I think it'll continue to not be good, but it'll continue not to be as bad as everyone's like waiting for it to explode. And it doesn't seem to happen, but who knows? Continuing with the stories that we've got, I do have to get off at the 1 hour thing. Again, house volume talking restrictions. So I've got 12 minutes to go through what we have left. But yeah, really interesting one here. There's been a lot of discussion. NHK took this up tonight. NHK's number 2 national news story tonight is Japan reopened for tourism. Why did only 252 people come in for tourism? And the number that they quoted on NHK was like 1,500, but like in the last 2 months, since Japan declared it was open for tourism again in June. It's kind of an insulting, stupid question. If you ask me, it's kind of obvious. We've talked about it here. They didn't really reopen for tourism. The tourism that was reopened, you had to be on a guided tour where the tour had a government-approved guide who would supervise you the entire time, basically like a North Korean tour, who would watch and monitor to make sure that you're not running off and giving everybody coronavirus or something like that, just so that everybody felt safe about tourists. And not only that, but the process both to apply for visas, which were still, you had to apply at your consulate or embassy. You couldn't just get them visa-free travel like before. Cases being quoted on the news that foreign embassies still didn't have the capacity, and they didn't understand how to do the new visa, because this is a whole new procedure, actually having to apply for visas where you didn't have to apply before for tourist visas. Certifying the tour guides and getting government approval for the tours, all of that wasn't ready when they reopened in June. And some of those take more than a month or two to be able to even create the registered and approved tours and the tour guides and to get the visas. So they declared they're open for tourism again, pretty much for Kishida just to be able to declare at the G7 that Japan's doing what everyone else does and is matching and is reopening, when it really wasn't. So big mystery. How did Japan not have so many tourists? Basically they set up a kind of tourism based on North Korean tourism. In fact, arguably even more restrictive than North Korean tourism, with minders and tours and stuff like that. And a lot of people online said, who would ever want to go to Japan on a tour? And that's unfair. There are a lot of people, particularly for Asian tours, it's very common to use tours. And I think that's where most of the tours have been coming from. But, elderly people, there's lots of reasons that you might find it more comfortable to have someone arrange all the travel and sightseeing and whatever, and make it comfortable for you to go around and just enjoy the sightseeing. There's nothing wrong with that. Of course, maybe incomprehensible to someone in their 20s who goes backpacking everywhere. But, nothing wrong with having tours per se. But the way that the government's done it is that it was designed to basically just be a token, tiny number of foreigners. And they haven't really reopened to tourism. However, like the number says above there, what has happened in the last 3 months is that over 120,000 foreign travelers have come in over the last 3 months, So the 252 were tourists, but the other 100,000 people were people who have been waiting for a long time: students, working visas, spouse visas, every other kind of visa. There have actually been hundreds of thousands of foreigners come in, particularly and with a surge in the last few months with the capacity at airports opening up. So there are a lot of foreigners coming in. And you know what? I'm kind of glad that the tourism number is low, because it means that they're not blaming foreigners for the current COVID spike, which they could arguably if they understood that lots of foreigners are coming in. And indeed, more Japanese are more freely traveling in and out based on temporary short-term work visas, long-term work visas, student visas, stuff like that. And hell, we probably are bringing in some more of these variants in coronavirus, as are Japanese who are traveling. But at least having the kind of restricted tourism, which they're now emphasizing on NHK, I'm kind of glad, because it kind of takes blaming foreigners out of the equation. But yeah, what can you do? Oh yeah, of course, Sadiq, the Turkey changed its name. That was another big thing that happened, isn't it? But yeah, I'd love to visit Turkey sometime, by the way. Other stories going on. Beaujolais, talking of prices going up. Beaujolais Nouveau prices are expected to nearly double in Japan. I still frame this as being, as being an enormous practical joke being played on the Japanese people by French people. So what is Beaujolais Nouveau? I think I've talked about this before, but people who don't know, Beaujolais Nouveau is basically the very first grapes of the season are made into wine. And are kind of celebrated during the grape harvest season in France. And in France, that is kind of a big deal. It's basically, and people say that you can tell by the Beaujolais Nouveau whether this is going to be a good year or not. You can tell by the grapes of the first wine that's made. You can get an indication as to whether it's going to have the characteristics that's going to produce long-term great wine, whether 2022 is going to be a good year for wine or not. The Beaujolais Nouveau itself is famously terrible wine. They're new, barely fermented grapes. It's rough stuff. It does not taste good. I'm not a wine connoisseur at all, but Beaujolais Nouveau is cheap, not good stuff. But of course, it's a big deal in France because it's associated with the seasonal celebration. Some people do care about it for how it indicates how wine is going to be. But when Japanese found out, when basically it was a combination of when people were trying to figure out how to sell more wine to Japanese and have them drinking less beer and whiskey and drinking more wine. And then when they heard that there was a seasonal festival in France where they celebrate, the first wine of the season, that was very compatible with Japanese ideas about having a party every time there's a new season for something. And so it set off this thing that apparently goes all the way back to the bubble, certainly from the 1990s, where all of a sudden it became this huge boom that Japanese were like, oh yeah, we want to try some of that Beaujolais Nouveau first wine of the year ourselves. I know some French wine dealers through my time in Japan who speak somewhat contemptuously. Of course, wine has definitely gotten more available, and there are some great wine bars, and there are people who really do know their wines in Japan. But I do know some wine dealers who speak pretty contemptuously, I guess like a good French expert wine dealer would, who speak kind of contemptuously of Japanese tastes and say that you could sell them Ribena here and tell them that it's high quality wine and they'll buy it. I suppose what could be a more French shopping experience than to buy something expensive and be insulted while you buy it. The Beaujolais Nouveau thing is sort of like, this is where I have my theory that this is a huge practical joke, that they basically, Japanese are like willing to pay like the first tuna of the tuna season. They'll pay thousands of dollars to get the very first Beaujolais Nouveau of the year, the worst wine of the entire harvest. Japanese will charter airplanes to fill them up, and they will pay, for a $5 bottle of wine, they'll pay thousands of dollars to get the first couple of bottles in, and the general, and they'll buy every drop of Beaujolais. It's a wonder that any wine gets made at all from Japan, buying up all of the Beaujolais Nouveau wine. In France, they literally charter planes to ship this over. The supermarkets used to fill up with them. People drink this stuff and they don't realize it's just terrible, horrible wine. It's a wonder that anyone gets into wine from drinking this stuff. And but it's a great time. It's the French embassies and restaurants have huge parties for it. They play it up, and Japanese love it. And again, a lot of people sort of mock that Japanese can't tell the difference anyway, or a lot can't, which is kind of insulting, but it appears to be true, at least based on the track record. And it looks like this year, we have the war in Ukraine and fuel prices and everything else, and giving it the pillows and first class, flying the special bottles over, or whatever, it's going to cost twice as much. A question as to whether that will affect sales, but it's never hurt them before. So we'll see. Generally, if I recall correctly, Beaujolais Nouveau, I think, starts coming in around like October. But I could be wrong about that, actually. Maybe it should be soon. If you think about it, it's the first grapes of the harvest. They should be starting soon anyway. But still hilarious to me that Japanese go so crazy for that. Yeah. So in the comments, Sadiq Hakanguris, no one accepted Turkey name in the Western world. It's just the ego of the Turks. I became a US citizen, not affiliated with Turks anymore. Yeah, well, congrats. I think I remember when you became a U.S. citizen, and congrats on that. I thought it was interesting that they changed the name, and I can accept. Hey, if they want to change their name, they can change the name. Japan can change their name too. And certainly, I don't see. I mean, congrats on being a U.S. citizen, and that certainly is your choice. Certainly, I mean, Turkey's been an interesting country in the last few years. I still think it's a wonderful just a culture, and I love the food and stuff like that, so I don't think there's anything wrong with having pride in having heritage from there. But yeah, I can certainly understand politically wanting to distance yourself with all the stuff going on at the moment. But yeah, much respect. Yoni, have I ever been to Fuji Rock? I've been to Fuji Rock about 5 times. It's one of those things, I must admit, if I were to go now, I really, I wouldn't. Maybe if I could convince my son to go with me, I might get a tent and go camping and do it the proper way on the ski slopes. But sleeping in a tent on a ski slope is not comfortable. And, it really sucks a lot of endurance out of you. Really, if I could get the Naiba Prince and actually stay in a hotel, I'd probably go and do it. I'm getting to that age where I'd go more for comfort. But yeah, I did it a few years. It was great. It was like life. It was life transforming. Highly recommend if you can go. But and I have been. But I tell you what, 2.5 days, 3 days at high altitude, basically all day, all night in the mountains at rock and techno concerts. The best music in the world. I mean, wonderful. But I tell you what, at the end of 3 days, you're pretty exhausted. Sleeping on rocks on a ski slope in a tent, but it was still great memory. So yes, I've definitely done that, Yoni, and I highly recommend it. One thing about Japan that you'll know if you've been here for 5 minutes is that people do not stop at pedestrian crossings. It's one of those things that people really worried about for the Olympics, that when foreigners would walk out onto pedestrian crossings, cars will not stop, and people are going to get run over. Of course, that was averted by the fact that no one came here for the Olympics. So, of course, problem solved. However, Tochigi Prefecture, where apparently they did a survey, they watched and they found out 4 years ago in a survey that Japan was actually, Tochigi was the worst prefecture in Japan, second least attractive prefecture in Japan, but the worst prefecture for cars not stopping at pedestrian crossings. They only stop 0.9% of the time. So, of course, kids and people in that prefecture probably know that, crossing a pedestrian crossing, you don't walk out there on faith that the cars will stop. You wait and let the cars go first and wait for an opening, which means that really the pedestrian crossing is just sort of a guide for where to cross rather than that it's safe. So they're trying to address that with TV commercials, emphasizing that you are a murderer if you run someone over when you do that. Some people suggesting online, and I kind of agree, that why not just set up cameras and fines? I think it would be outrage if you did that, but that would be the point. I think that would change behavior more than some TV commercials. But yeah, Tochigi trying to change behavior on that. Here's the NHK story, by the way, that I just mentioned, just talking about what's the mystery with why there are so few tourists coming into the Japan. 1 month, only 1,500 people. Why? Who can figure it out? Who would have thought that if you ran a tourism system like North Korea, that you might not have as many tourists come? Big mystery. Final story. Unseen Japan. I just watched this tonight. Man, everything that Unseen Japan puts out, I think they have the highest quality Japan history vids on YouTube, and I highly recommend this one as well. I never would have thought that Meiji Japan's anti-fashion movement, I never thought that was very interesting, and I wasn't rushing to watch it. It was on my list, but I sort of got around to it tonight. Holy crap, highly recommended. Yes, it's about people who dress scruffy on purpose, looking like Ronin samurai, but it was like linked to the Meiji Restoration Civil Wars. It's the assassination of the Empress of Korea, the assassinations of and coups in Japan, Mishima Yukio after World War II. And even Yankees and so on today all have this sort of consistent chain linked through history of these disaffected samurai who, rejected the effeminate westernization of Japan and praised macho, scruffy samurai looks. and dressed deliberately in a certain way. This goes back more than 100 years and it's like huge, like epic historical scope just based on dressing scruffily. It's a great video. Highly recommended. And do check out and support Unseen Japan. They put a ton of work into all of their content and it's top notch. I really, really do enjoy it. That is the show. I am up on time. That was the final story. It's perfectly timed. I'm going to final look at the comments. Yoni is going for the first time next weekend. Awesome. I hope you have good weather. It's bad if you have bad weather up there, but it's wonderful. It's going to change your life. So congrats on that, Yoni. Tell me how it was after you're back. Marcos Fernandez, good to have you in here, and good afternoon. Good evening. It's wrapping up here, but good for you getting in here. Pyramid Garden tent site should be flat. Yeah, hope it is. And yeah, look, thank you for joining me every week. Remember to like if you like this show. I love doing this for you all. I only really do it for the likes. Really appreciate having everybody in here. Was Aaron here in the comments? I thought I saw someone shouting out Aaron before. Did I miss? Oh, late boom from Odie Jr. Volume. Chisai kana. Gomen ne. Sorry that the volume was so small. That's partly me talking quietly and maybe moving too far away from the mic. I'll try to do better at this. Quickly scanning through, is there anyone else I didn't say hello to? Great to see everybody in here anyway. Great to see you all. Thank you for supporting me. Remember, you can follow me on Twitter if you want to keep up with this stuff during the week. I'll see you all next week. And yeah, smash the like button, subscribe, stay safe, don't catch the Rona. Peace. Boom. Ending now. Have a good week, everyone.